Hello and happy 2022. What the heck? That is crazy. I felt like 2021 was just one giant extension of 2020, which we all know sucked. So I'm very happy and glad to be in 2022. I still can't get over saying 2022. Like, that sounds futuristic. Like, we are in the future. It really feels like 2021 was yesterday. I'm not gonna apologize for that joke. That joke is gold and I make it every year and my friends and family hate it. Now let's get into this video. I'm gonna be doing a 1-sentence summary and a 1-sentence review of every single book I read in 2021. This video is 100% inspired, no, really just copied by Jack Edwards. I'm gonna try to do them in 1 sentence, which is gonna be hard because I have a lot of thoughts on books. Beach Read by Emily Henry is the first book that I read in 2021, which that sentence I just said is not a part of my review or summary, just so you know, because I know you're keeping track to make sure I just do 1 sentence. Okay, my 1-sentence summary. 2 writers, a romance and a fiction writer who were college rivals, make a summer-long deal to switch genres for the next book that they write. This book made me fall in love with reading after not having picked up a book for fun since middle school. Period. That's my 1-sentence review. In all seriousness, I feel like everyone has heard of Beach Read, and so I don't need to dwell and spend a lot of time on this book. 5 stars for me. Great read. People We Meet on Vacation, another book by Miss Emily Henry. The summary for this book is 2 best friends that are polar opposites take a trip together every single summer, but something happened 2 years ago and they are no longer friends. Okay, my review. My only critique of this book is that the reveal at the end wasn't that shocking to me, but I absolutely loved the 2 main characters, and I loved how almost the entire story is told through their summer vacations. That felt like a run-on sentence. I don't know grammar, but it only had 1 period, so it's 1 sentence. We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This book is about a wealthy family that spends the summers on their private island, but one summer something tragic happened to one of the girls, and she can't remember what happened and no one will tell her what happened. That was definitely should have been 2 sentences. I loved the plot twist in this book, but I didn't really bond with the author's writing style or the characters, so I almost DNF'd this book. But the plot twist is so cool, in my opinion. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Although this book is a romance, at its heart, it's really Evelyn's story navigating Hollywood, and it deals with a lot of really tough topics like navigating Hollywood as a woman, it deals with race, identity, etc. This book is equal parts heartbreaking and inspiring, and a book that makes me feel the huge range of emotions that this book made me feel is rare. I also cried in this book, which is rare for me. I think this is like one of 3 books I've cried in. The Hating Game by Miss Sally Thorne. This book is about Lucy and Josh, who are co-workers that hate each other, but maybe hating someone feels disturbingly similar to falling in love with them. If you've read that book, you know. You know. This book had everything I love, from enemies to lovers, to a work romance, to witty banter, and it just made me feel so giddy inside. Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I'm actually letting my mom borrow this book right now, so I don't have the copy with me. This book is about a British prince and the son of the US president who start out as enemies, but end up in a relationship that could upend the 2 nations. I loved this book so much. This is one of my top 3 books, maybe my favorite book that I read in 2021. I'm hesitant to say that, to award that honor to a book, but that might be this book. It is such a complex book and rich world with the politics, the backgrounds of the 2 characters, and the intense and adorable love that they have for each other. Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. Why did I do that? Okay, so we've come to our first series. I am going to be reviewing series as a whole because it would take a long time if I went through every single individual book. So a little bit of background really quick on the Addicted series. There's also a series called the Calloway Sisters series, and both of these series are supposed to be read together. There's actually a whole reading order, so you're supposed to intertwine how you read them. So it's kind of like one giant series, but since they're technically 2 separate series, I'm gonna talk about them separately. So first we've got the Addicted series, which is a childhood friends to lovers series involving alcoholism, sex addiction, and the trauma from growing up in a really toxic and really wealthy family. Okay, just a little aside, I think this is my favorite series I read this year. I care about these characters so much because their love for each other and the things they would do for each other is so strong. Plus, Reading about characters battling addiction is something I've never read about before, and it was very heartbreaking, but I loved it. Okay, the Calloway Sisters series is in the same world and involves the same characters as the Addicted series, but it focuses on two different couples, one of which is rivals to lovers and one which is friends to lovers. I love that this is a friendship series as much as it is a romance series, and how unique each set of couples is, but at their core, they deal with the same issues of living with a toxic, wealthy family, etc. This is also the only series I have happy cried in. I think it maybe is like the only time I've happy cried in my whole life. That made me sound like so cold-hearted, like I have no feelings. But like, how often do you happy cry? Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. Josh and Hazel are very opposite, but they are besties. However, they have both had some trouble in the romance department, so they decide to set each other up on double blind dates. This book is very meh to me, and not because there's anything wrong with it. It just pretty much went how I envisioned without much surprise or depth, but I did really like the characters. Okay, I feel like most of that review was negative, so just to say one positive thing about it.
Around this part, I definitely just like kind of gave up on the one sentence aspect, but I really tried. And most of them are like 2 sentences.
The girl in this book is like very outgoing, very spunky, and the guy is like much more quieter and reserved, and I feel like that's rare in romance books. I feel like most of the time the girl is quieter and the guy is like cocky, outgoing, whatever. So I did really appreciate the characters' personalities, especially the girl's personality, but yeah, overall, it was okay. The Off-Campus series by Elle Kennedy. I've not completely finished this series. I am 3 books in. It's a companion novel series, so each book has a completely different plot, but it exists with the same world and the same characters, so I don't really know how to summarize it in one sentence, so instead, I'm just gonna list a bunch of things about it. There's an enemies to lovers story in this series. There's a second chance romance in this series. It's set in college. It is dual POV between the guy and the girl in each book. It is a sports romance. It's hockey. I freaking love this series so much because Elle Kennedy does a fantastic job of writing the college male POV, and it's a sports romance, period. I mean, do I really need to say more? Like, sports romance, period. The One of Us is Lying series, so far I've read One of Us is Lying and One of Us is Next, which are also companion novels, but they are again set in the same world with some overlapping characters, but for the most part, different characters. They are murder mystery, drama, they have a little bit of romance. The entire series is YA, and they're very much like Breakfast Club vibes if you've seen the Breakfast Club movie. I love that both books have 3 to 4 characters POVs, because that made me feel like I was really involved in their high school, and the endings of both books really surprised me. Why is my neighbor playing Lady Gaga? We're just gonna keep going. We're gonna power through it. November 9th by Miss Colleen Hoover is about Ben and Fallon, who in a seemingly chance encounter meet on November 9th, and they decide to meet up every single year only on November 9th. I love the concept of this book, but I felt like only getting to spend 1 day a year with the characters didn't really allow me to get to know them that well or really see the full picture of their life. Okay, I have to give a second sentence, but I also hate insta-love romances, and I thought the plot twist at the end was kind of gimmicky. They Both Die at the End is a YA book. In a world where people get a phone call on the day they're gonna die, 2 teenagers who were previously strangers spend their last day alive on Earth together. I love, 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 love the concept of this book, and I thought the world building was so good. But it was a bit slow for me, and I just felt like with the incredible concept, the author could have done so much more with the plot and made it so much more interesting. Top Secret by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy is a new adult enemies to lovers romance. It is about a frat guy whose girlfriend wants him to find a male to be in their threesome, and he starts falling for this guy that he is anonymously messaging on a dating app that he doesn't know is his frat brother whom he hates. What a juicy plot. Wow. It was hard to fit that all into one sentence, and that was probably a huge run-on. I love that this is an romance in a frat house, which is like the most unlikely and probably most toxic place, if I'm being stereotypical, where an romance would exist. I also love that it's not just a romance, but it's also about the main character really discovering his identity and his sexuality. Then we've got The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This is kind of an enemies to lovers romance, but they're not really enemies for that long. But it is about a girl who goes to visit her dad in rural Alaska, and she ends up falling for an Alaskan pilot, but she lives in a city on the mainland, and neither one wants to move to be near the other. I loved that the obstacle in this book, them living in different places, is so heartbreakingly realistic. And I also thought that the very rural Alaskan setting was really interesting because I've never read a book set in a very rural place before. Then we've got The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. The summary of this book is after the bride and groom get sick at their wedding, the maid of honor and the best man must pretend to be married in order to go on the honeymoon trip in the bride and groom's place. I love fake dating so much, and the honeymoon setting was also really fun. Okay, sorry, I'm just gonna start a second sentence. I also love that there's a lot of very juicy family drama outside of just the romance plot. However, I know a lot of people didn't like the family drama, so even though I liked it, you may not like it. But I loved it. I love how I'm like whispering with my book, like, who is here to hear me? Who? Tell me who. Also, it wasn't even a secret. Like, why did that have to be whispered? Then I read Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. The summary of this book is something really bad happens to Bree, and so to kind of run away from the bad thing that happens, she runs away to this small town where she meets Archer, who has also had a lot of trauma and really bad things happen to him in his past. I cared about these characters so freaking much, and I love how they were both able to heal from their past with the help of each other. I also cried in this book, and again, one of like 3 books I've ever cried in. Then we have the Devil's Night series by Penelope Douglas, and how do I even describe this series? Disclaimer that I've only read the first 2 books in the series so far, but it is enemies to lovers and kind of childhood crush to lovers. It is also about a group of guys who grow up in a very wealthy family, and it is a dark romance. Emphasis on dark. This series is crazy, and I have always been very hooked while reading the series, but I just don't know that dark romance is like my favorite sub-romance genre. But if you like dark, twisted books, then you'll love this series. And that is every single book I read in 2021. I feel like it didn't feel like that many books, and that's partially because I didn't go in depth on every single book I read in each series, and then also I didn't get back into reading for fun until Beach Read, like I mentioned, and I read this book in August, so this is only the books I have read since like mid-August. I think that was a total of 24 books. So 24 books in about 4.5 months. Ooh, please leave me book recommendations for 2022 because I'm starting to make my TBR list, figure out what I want to read this year, and I need some book recommendations. Happy New Year. Make sure you follow my Instagram because I post on there a lot what I'm reading before it comes out on YouTube, and I'll see you guys next week. Okay, bye!